Thank you very, very much. Now I'm going to open for questions. Please ask questions to me, not directly to the speaker. We'll take 3 or 4 questions at a time. Hands. Oh, there he is. Oh, yes. Let's go through it on this.
Thank you for that very sophisticated presentation. I never thought when when I saw the poster that you were going to tackle the land issue in the process. I never thought about it outrightly, but I really like the way you brought that in and the way you brought into the argument that stuff. One of the influences on, one of the ideological influences on Rhodes was social Darwinism. And it also became very importantly one of his legacies. In your view, how will academics in universities like where we are sitting right now, and universities like Cape Town and Stellenbosch, Free State and related universities, how can we tackle the challenges brought into the universities by social Darwinism? Because I argue social Darwinism is not dead. So long as there is this thinking that black people are inferior and therefore should we have more blacks in the university system, we are affecting quality. We are affecting the status of the institution, and so how, in your view, can we tackle social Darwinism as a problem today? Because I think it's alive.
Okay, let's take a few more questions. We're still thinking of another question. All right, so maybe you can answer that.
Okay, how can we? Who is we? Okay, no, I'm just asking myself. I'm thinking aloud. Yes. And I think rather than imagine, it's good. I mean, I'm a visionary at one level and so on, but I think that this question is best tackled by addressing what is happening right now. And I have tried to argue in my paper that what's happening now is historic, in the sense that we have a movement, right, that was initiated by students with sympathizers that's doing exactly what you are saying. They are raising these issues, and they have won a victory. And the victory was the removal of a statue which had to be fast-tracked, like fast-track land reform. And in 2 months, less than 2 months, in a month, 3 weeks and so on, protests started and the statue was removed. Despite all claims that were made initially by the management that council must meet, and council can only meet that particular day, that must go to the provincial government. There are laws governing heritages and so on. But the students, that movement, what they said was that, look, this is an embarrassment. This issue has been raised many years ago, and the statue must go right now. And it went. So that, to me, is an indication that change is possible, right? And my response to your question would start by analyzing how it happened and how that momentum can be in fact, the momentum is building up. It's not just the statue now, right? It's the statue, and the legacy of Cecil Rhodes. Right. Issues of curriculum development are a hotly debated issue, not only at UCT, but here, right, and elsewhere. And it's not discussed by students. Academics themselves see the importance and the merit of debating these issues. So that's, I mean, that would be my very practical sort of response to your question. Also to show that this idea that things can be predetermined and so on, that it's an argument against that. Change is possible.
Okay.
Thank you for your people. I'm interested in the example you made about the Langa district in UHURU and the hitman being challenged through the local court system. And I mean, it ties into a question around also, you're talking about this bifurcated state and how little, how similar this government is to an apartheid government. And I mean, in many ways, the urban space is policed in very similar ways as it was during apartheid, right? And access to the city is policed in the same ways, in ways that people from the rural Eastern Cape who now migrate to cities are told to go back to the Eastern Cape, right? When they ask for housing, for instance, in KZN, or in the Northwest Province, or in the Western Cape Province, right? They're told to go back to the Eastern Cape because this land is not for them, right? So you have this people evoking this language of ethnicity, or you belong, your space is in the rural space, right? This urban space is not for you to access. And obviously we know that people are challenging this, right? And they take people to courts but I feel like there's something different happening because, for instance, I mean, I'm interested in in which way you're critiquing Mamdani, because I suppose for me, it presents a question of what will this resistance look like? Will everybody be taken into a liberal system where where liberal democracy becomes the model then for how we move forward when everywhere we're seeing the limitations of this? Or is this resistance meaning that there's some kind of new forms of citizenship that people are asking for? Because even when in your book on the 100 revolts, people were saying, well, what's the problem here is that this chief is illegitimate, right? Not that we don't want a chieftaincy system, right? We want to engage, we want to participate, we want to be, but we like some of the modes of how this works. What we don't like is authoritarianism. And I suppose that, Mamdani doesn't really go into the nuances of what that politics means. And I mean, is it, are we able to think beyond liberalism, basically? Is that where we're seeing resistance?
Okay, just hold on, there's Babalo over there, yeah?
Thanks, Prof, for your very detailed presentation. In my thinking, I think that actually UCT is way ahead in terms of this debate compared to Rhodes, in the sense that UCT managed to, get together within a few weeks and we discuss, and then we dismantle the statue. Unfortunately, it's not the case in our university, where you find that we talk about Rhodes the brand, and we associate the colonial practices within our universities with the so-called brand. Okay? But my question is that, how do we disconnect our universities, especially the current university that we are calling Rhodes, from this entanglement with the white funders, because that is being used to actually stall progress in terms of transformation. We have been trying to be, to come up with creative ways of how do we disconnect our universities from this white conservative alumni, okay, that continues to hold us back in terms of the justifications, for example, of not changing the name. So that is my question, but I do feel like UCT is way ahead.
That's a very important question, yes. One more, I'll take one more.
Thank you very much for the presentation. When you said Rhodes legacies, I was expecting to hear something more deeper than just what's in the front line in terms of what's the fundamental principle behind Rhodes advocating for education. I think we've seen, let me make an example. When the Spanish invaded the Mayans, what they did is they bent down all their writing system, all their books and everything, and forced the European writing system and stuff. So I think as much as we black people can try to fight this, mentally, because we are enforced to read and write and know that all our clothing, all our education comes from the Western. So in a sense, mentally, we are inferior, even though we can fight and say we want equality. I think the Rhodes knew that in order to control people, you must enforce them to receive the power from you, because education is power. And if we see beyond that and realize that Rhodes must fall may mean that we destroy even the writing system. We invent our own African way of encapsulating history, because the Chinese, they have their own ways of for instance, of language and writing. And Mayans also had their own ways, and now it's become like a field trying to encode the Mayan code. So I think fundamentally behind education lies the sense of control, and I think if we try to tackle it in all ways, for instance, I'll make this example people take for granted. When you think of the North Pole, do you think of some place that's up? And it shouldn't, the earth is spherical, it shouldn't be up. Because you think of it as a place up, you have this mental thing embedded in us that they are up, they are on top, and we are at the bottom. And it should be a choice. It could have been down or anything. But in terms of scrutinizing education in that level, where we see some parts of education that has divided society mentally, I think that's also something we should address.
Okay, we have 3 questions.
Yeah.
Okay, the first question was it's on Palanga, it's on ethnoship, it's on chieftainship, and a couple of things, and liberalism, and non-democratic. First, in Pondoland, yes, I mean in the book, people, denounce certain chiefs, and so on, not chieftainship itself. But Kalanga is different. And in fact, Kalanga, they rejected the notion of chiefs, right? And, my work on democracy compromise, a bit detailed, sort of, extracts, drawn from archives, interviews, and so on, showing that people didn't like the institution. There were 2 locations, administrative areas, where they were chiefs. And each time the issue of chieftainship arose, people say that, look, you have authority only in your area, not in our areas. So the institution was rejected. And indeed, is being rejected. There might be problems with the way the lawyers presented the case. Because the lawyers, I think, what they wanted to foreground in this case was their notion of living customary law, which is a concept, that I find problematic. But I mean, it worked, for purposes of the case, you see. But, strictly speaking, I mean, the issue, in Kalanga, is about the right of people to elect their leaders, right? And now, on the critique of Mamdane, my critique of Mamdane, I mean, in this particular case, I use Mamdane, but also to say that, Mamdane tends to, basically what I'm saying is that Mamdane hasn't done any substantial field work to inform his conclusions or to enrich his conclusions. That having read Mamdane, done no field work, I could see these gaps. That this is what he says. He talks about this decentralized transport, almost a docile rural folk, right? But what I see in these areas is it's not just weapons of the weak and so on. Sometimes those weapons are weapons of the strong, you see, or people who are prepared to struggle. The court case is an outcome of a series of other actions that were taken at a local level. And the court case doesn't replace those activities. Those activities are ongoing. It's almost like a combination of things that are used there. You don't find much of that in Mamdane, right? And the framework, I like and so on. It makes sense and so on. Now, if Mamdane were to have done, I don't want to think for him, but I'm just trying to think of possibilities. If you were not to do serious field work, then you would possibly realize that this bifurcation is problematic. That a migrant worker is both urban and rural. Doesn't change that the minute you enter this space of chief so and so, then you become a different person, right? And how that is showing itself, in this area and other areas that I've done research and others that have done research, is that precisely because of this connection between the urban and the rural, those who are exposed to, say, urban influences, trade union influences, and so on, when they come back, they challenge these chiefs. And it is some of those elements that are in the forefront of these struggles. So there is no Chinese wall dividing the urban and the rural, or that if you are urban, the minute you get to a rural area, you become a different human being. So that's a related critique. And of course, right now I'm working on another critique, level of critiquing Mamdane. And that's his separation of the political and the economic. Right? Because that's what he does. Yes, he says in South Africa that, look, I say that, you will see that, you are no different from the rest of the continent. And he says, look, I'm not taking into account political economy issues. I'm just restricting myself to politics. But that bifurcation, it's problematic. It makes it difficult for him to respond to the kind of critique I'm using. Yeah, I'm making of his work. And of course, it's becoming more interesting, and this is where this framework is this is how, the reason I've gone back to this critique of Mamdane. I'm doing work on Zambia. And in Zambia, there is an interesting development where customary land, as a result of neoliberalism and so on, where customary land is now converted into leasehold. And the minute land has been converted into leasehold title, then chiefs lost complete control of that piece of land. Even in instances where that lease has either expired or is terminated, the land never gets back to chiefs. Now the question I'm asking is, if our problem now is, say, a dualism, where land is under chiefs, there's chiefly governance, right? What are we going to say when the chiefly structures are eroded by neoliberalism? Is that decolonization? That's the question I'm asking. That would come close to what you're saying, that neoliberalism is resolving the issue of dualism in Zambia. Is this what we mean by decolonization? Certainly I don't mean that. But if one were to follow Mamdana's logic, it could land you into that conclusion.
Okay. You have the lady at the back there.
Oh, yeah. Babaron.
Yeah.
UCT I had. What do you expect me to say?
No, that was just a comment.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you raised the question. I mean, it's coming. I mean, it's becoming an issue at UCT, where we are told that there are funders who are withholding money. And I mean, in circles, the management circles, and those who are close to those circles, there's the issue that they're trying, to resolve. And the question is, I mean, what if no funders withdraw cash? We have Zimbabwe. We have Zimbabwe and fast-track land reform. And, the boycott and so on. That could be an image of your city's future in some ways. How would we respond to that? I mean, these are serious questions that one must know. I don't say, the answer, and you say, look, the past was better than the future. No, there should be ways of resolving this. And one sort of issue I raise at UCT, when I talk to those in management that I can talk to, is the prospects of raising money from black capital. We don't have a history of a giving group of black rich people. And, shouldn't there be a campaign against them? And make them to give? It's an issue. They have money. They have money, and we should talk to them. Rhodes alumni, I got my degree here. So I'm not sure whether I belong to that conservative group. Yeah. Okay. Well, I think, there's a case, that's a group, that can mobilize. At UCT, the Rhodes Must Fall campaign successfully mobilized that group, alumni. And whether that's sustainable or not, I don't know. Sometimes you get victory, and 10 years later, things are different.
Perhaps the idea is to stress that the alumni are not a homogeneous group.
Of course, yeah.
And there are contradictions, maybe that could be taken advantage of.
Yeah. You've raised a series of things now about education. And when you're talking about education, that where we trained by the West and so on, I thought about my own situation, where I belong to an era that is about a decade or so after the introduction of band education. And load shedding.
Nice one. Nice one. Oh, boys. Oh, gosh, this was unpredicted. Can we, maybe we could, do you want to continue answering? Can we see a little bit? in order to answer this question. I know obviously the movies is the filming is over.
Okay.
But you can continue.
Okay. So I mean, and at that time, at that time, no, there were people, teachers, who resigned, and from their profession, most sort of going for the legal profession, because they claimed that they wouldn't teach Bantu education. And my own father was a teacher, and he became one of the dissenters. He stayed in teaching, and his argument, and he would defend himself, go to meetings and so on. His argument was that if we all resign, who is going to teach the black child? Right? And if the black child is not educated, right, how will they overcome the difficulties that they are experiencing? So that was the issue, and of course, we went to school. There was no other option. Either I went to a Bantu education school, or you were not educated at all. We used Bantu education, some of us, not all of us. We used Bantu education to dethrone Bantu education, to the extent to which we did. Some of us were involved in initiatives like Circuit, Kanya College, where we established alternative institutions that taught what should be taught, right? And if we took the attitude that this is Western education or Bantu education, maybe the world would have been different today. I would definitely not have been here. Yeah.
Which would have been a great pity. Shall I ask for a collective decision? What would you like to do? Should we continue a little bit until the batteries run out on the cell phones? Or do we give in and say the state is one? I know. No,
Generator.
It's just a conspiracy.
Generator.
We don't have generators here.
Where is it? The light outside is dark.
We don't generate any. Yes, you were first, and then Professor Paul Mayer. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Shall we be quiet?
Thank you. This is something that I've sort of been thinking about, and in certain ways, it seems a bit irrelevant in terms of the time that we're in. But on the other, it's obviously something that is on my mind that I sort of have to mull over when I'm taking my shower. And it has to do with how we've thought of Cecil John Rhodes post-1994, and specifically with something such as the Mandela Rhodes Scholarship, those sort of things that have been hotly debated. And there's sort of a lot of reading that one would do, or commentators that one would hear around, why would Mandela allow his name to be next to Rhodes? So that scholarship would either be, taking advantage of, the financial situation to ensure that more people are sort of educated, specifically black students get the scholarships to get education. And it would also be that it was quite unfortunate, and it was a result, of the time, and we ought to be looking in different ways based on where we are now. And for me, I do not sort of buy into that logic or that way of reading Mandela, because I think for all of us, what makes Nelson Mandela is his sort of radical conception of reconciliation, which is that you can forgive your enemy, or you should forgive your enemy. And some could probably read the Mandela Rhodes Scholarship as a sort of a gesture, to say you bring in your enemy next to your name as a sign of reconciliation, to sort of try to speak to something in how you want to create your new society, your new democracy. So it probably may have actually nothing to do with money, or nothing to do with it being a problem that was fostered by the time, but an ethical imperative that has to do with one's relation to the other that he wanted to teach us. I think that's why we all think he's remarkable, precisely because he could do that sort of a thing. Now, the question obviously that we're challenged with is, and for me, I mean, it's a challenge, like when I have to think, it's a challenge. How do you, on one hand, maintain his ethical imperative for one's relation to the other, even one's relation to one's enemy, but on the other, you have to make radical calls for economic equality and call out the ways in which white supremacy continues to perpetuate itself in post-apartheid South Africa. But so, I mean, when we go into Levinas, how do you relate to the other? How do you see the other? The notion that we're all really equal and so forth. One has to have that sort of Mandela-ish notion, but on the other hand, one has to make that call. And a lot of times, there's a conflict between these two. You could either cut this into identity politics, white versus blacks, and we make our radical calls, rightly so, of course, but on the other, of course, we know, right, whether it's racism, classism, tribalism, xenophobia, or anything, that actually this can always collapse in some way if it's not undergirded by this ethical imperative of how one relates to the other. And I think the trick is in being able to manage those two things that a lot of times collapse into each other.
Brief comment on the Rhodes School campaign. The question for me is, why now? And the very straightforward answer to that is, well, it's the result of that gesture by the student a few weeks ago. And that I find it bothers me slightly. What's been happening the last 20 years? Thousands of people have walked past that statue. What's been happening? Is it a case of historical amnesia? People haven't known or cared too much about Cecil Rhodes, who he was? Or has there been this deep undercurrent of anger which has been suppressed as people walk past? That I don't know. What it does, when I say why now, it seems to me to point to a generalized failure on the part of just about everybody. University management, academic staff, and students in failing to address this question and only allowing it to come to the surface 20 years later. So that's one point. I'd also like to say something about what Dr. Arnold said about Rhodes being behind. Well, I half agree with that and half don't agree with that. I think moving the statue was actually dead easy. It doesn't have any major implications. I'm surprised that there might be funders withdrawing funds from UCT because of that. I mean, Rhodes, in fact, was 20 years ahead of UCT. We took away a marble bust of Cecil Rhodes, which used to stand in the main entrance. It was just taken away and put into storage without any kind of fuss whatsoever. But Dr. Albert did raise the important question about donors, and you spoke about it as well. And I think this is a real issue. I mean, one could say this is changing the name of the university is an important matter of principle, stuff the donors, stuff their money. One could say that. It's a legitimate argument. At the same time, there are people saying, well, you know, the name's not the real issue. There are some real deep, fundamental issues of transformation which are far, far more important. And if you're going to argue that, what you're really saying is that the name change is just window dressing. Yeah, there are deeper issues that are much more important. And therefore, if it is just window dressing, how much are you prepared to pay for the window dressing? Because there are going to be costs involved in changing the name of Rhodes University. This is the issue that the Bowl raised. How do we deal with that? I'm not sure how we deal with that. But I was told that the name change for Rand Afrikaans University to the University of Johannesburg cost 50 million rand. That's what I've been told. The cost here, well, obviously, one wouldn't be spending that. One might be spending 5 million, 10 million, I don't know. I know of at least 3 million rand of donor money which will be withheld if the name changes at Rhodes. So the name change at Rhodes, I think, is much more complicated than removing the statue of UCT.
Okay, there's another question. Yeah.
Thank you very much for this lecture. I'm just trying to make, I just want to make sure that I'm understanding the connections that you're making in terms of, is it a fair that the students are not only underscoring how a lack of transformation impoverishes their intellectual experience, but that it also absolves the state in significant ways, because then the students leave the university without the tools to challenge the state, the land question being a core site of contestation. So if we are silent about Rhodes and Rhodes' role in the land question, so how do we then have a robust conversation? How can then we produce students who would be able to make the state account if the academy is not able to make those connections, to connect those struggles? So I guess then the broader question is, to what extent is this moment not only telling us about a crisis in terms of transformation, but a broader crisis of ideas within the university, a broader crisis, a death of ideas in the humanities, and which the students are doing for the academics, you know, and to what extent is it rendering the academics themselves irrelevant?
Thank you. Now we have got 3 interesting questions.
Yeah. This is the Mandela one. I think with Mandela, maybe this is something that you should consider. You should consider that there might be a significant number of people who like Mandela and accept sort of what he did and so on. But it's also important to know that Mandela has got his own detractors. And there are people who are critical of Mandela, even scholars. I mean, I'll refer you to Neville Alexander at the scholarly level. All his writings about Mandela, his relationship with Mandela on Robben Island, outside Robben Island, Mandela's role sort of in the transition and so on. It's important to realize that. And I dare say that maybe people who belong to other political traditions, like the PAC and so on, that they would be more critical of Mandela. In fact, on the issue of statue, right? Now, there's been talk, said, look, remove Rhodes and put Mandela there. And I said that, look, let's think 50 years down the line. The PAC government. Mandela's statue will fall. And do we want the humiliation? I was there when Rhodes' statue was removed. And it didn't fall. It was removed. Right? In fact, it was lifted. It didn't fall. It was lifted and carefully put.
Do you think you might bring it back later?
I don't know.
They push the box and then they bring it back.
But I mean, students, they threw stuff, at the statue, and they did all sorts of things. And the poor old man was sitting there. I mean, this is his pose, looking there. But the students, they were doing all sorts of things. And I watched, I took a video of that. I was to and see what it does to your thinking, right? Why now? Why now? I mean that question was raised at UCT by management, and it was raised in the context of suggesting not management as a homogeneous, some people in management, but then there was a suggestion that these students are being manipulated by forces outside the universities. That they don't have their own agenda. Somebody is using these students, which might be true, I don't know. You see, students are students, but they also are members of political organizations and so on, right? So, but I mean, I don't like that. I mean, you use something successfully if conditions, are ripe for that, something to succeed, right? And why did it work now and not earlier? The issue of the statue, when I was at UCT as a student, radicals. I was in the economic history department, Ian Fellis, and so on, and that was seen as a department of radicals and so on. The statue, was part of our daily bread and so on, right? And then I left Cape Town for Natal, and I went back to Cape Town in '97. The issue has been there everywhere. It would be raised by academics, right? And students, I don't remember instances where students raised the issue. Now and again, the SRC would raise it. But this year and March this year, I don't know what happened. Maybe it's the way in which the issue was reintroduced, not for the first time, right? By pouring the poo and so on, and attracting attention that the university couldn't be dismissive of. But I would agree with Bono that all of this is an indication of. I think in our case now, our management and our head, took a lot for granted, I think, and didn't want to listen. I'm not sure whether he's keen to listen now, and that was no part of the problem. If you listen to students' complaints about management at UCT, they come back to this issue. That you have these many meetings with a person who is not prepared to listen. Who will tell you the same response each time. Yeah. And for them, it was like, remember, I was reminded of my research on farm workers, 2012-13, right? When I asked them, why did it happen now and so on, and they said, look, we have been trying, but we've reached a stage where chenuch is chenuch, enough is enough. So, and of course, there are this thing is not happening in isolation. The country is burning. There are protests, left, right, and center. There is Marikana, there is Abashlali Basemjondolo, there is all sorts of things happening. And students are part of it. So, we are in trouble. And I think, academics, which brings me to the third question, that we have a role to play. We have a role to play. We must realize and recognize that we are in Africa, on the African continent, and we must relate with that continent. Curriculum reform is an important area. Curriculum is about the culture of the university, right? And I know as a lecturer that on a number of staff meetings talking about what we should teach and so on, some of our colleagues would model their teaching along American lines.
Exactly.
They would say that, look, this is what is taught in the state, therefore we must teach this. Whether this relates to the context that we find ourselves in, and the context of students and so on, it was immaterial. Colleagues would tell us that, look, I specialize in this, and I only teach students on my area of specialization. I wouldn't take into account the interests of students. Once again, in the 80s, we're not doing that. In the 80s, it was almost a fashion for people to do research on what was happening. Certainly in the social sciences, right? That was happening. But for some time, I suppose it was our honeymoon period, right? We thought that we could do things and disregard what was happening. And those frustrations, and they reach a point where they explode. When they explode is always difficult to say. But what one can say is that some of these things explode if they are not honest. So what you teach, but also how you teach is important. I mean, you see, Tina, one of these discussions, I had a 4-hour discussion with students yesterday, 5:30 to 9:30 in the evening, and we were talking about these issues, and they were complaining about an academic support program that they are exposed to. And my radical line on academic support, there is a need for academic support, but my sort of line is that if funds should be raised for the retraining of lecturers. That if ever we need people who must be reformed in terms of their teaching practices and so on, it is academics, not science.